Alright, so this is a Q&A for the Franz Bardon group on Facebook. So here we have 16 questions. Okay, first question's on how to develop fascia. So with barbell sports equipment. So I'll do a video at home using the kettlebells when I get back into the retreat. Dietary energetics, how to use diet to impact our training. Okay, so when you're working with energy, living food is the best. And if you put your food under a microscope and it's alive, you're going to get a vital energy boost from it of some type. When food is more highly cooked, the life force in the food disappears. So that's the first thing to look at. The second thing is your body type. What has energetic resonance with you? So let's say green juice, kale juice. Within 1 minute of a person drinking a glass of kale juice, thank you. Within 1 minute of a person drinking a glass of kale juice, their energy field will start to glow. It'll go from about 1 to 2 inch radiance up to 4-6 inch radiance. So it's a substantial amplification. I haven't really checked how long that lasts for, but it's definitely noticeable. And this happens with several different green juices. Having a green juice before Qigong practice, it's definitely going to work. Traditionally, you fast during meditative practice. So if you're into the keto diet, when you fast, your body goes into ketosis. This will give you those benefits. The way to balance your diet out is to not eat in the morning until you've done your morning practice. Some people use one meal a day to keep themselves in ketosis, and you have that meal at the end of the day, so you get all your practice beforehand, and then that fixes that problem. You stay in keto, the mind is really relatively quiet because of that. Carbohydrates tend to create a lot more static in your mind than ketogenic foods, so that's something to consider. Now, in regards to static, when you eat meat, you want to bless the food when you eat it, connect to the Akasha and the light of the spirit of the animal that it came from, and do a blessing on the animal. That'll neutralize that staticiness that comes from eating meat. If you're eating refined foods, sugary type foods, it's basically going to make a rhythmic whiplash in your field, and your meditation is not going to be very high quality. When you're eating more raw foods, despite the high carbohydrate, the life force that it generates will balance that out. But you have to look at, are you insulin sensitive or insulin resistant within your body type? If you have any insulin resistance, which most people eat a lot of processed foods you're better off on a ketogenic diet. If you're insulin sensitive, you'd be best off on a raw, whole food, plant-based diet. So you've got to look at which is better for your body type and your health and your system. All right, so as diet, energetics. How to train Bardon's clairvoyance exercises, the expectations of the results. How do we ensure we are really seeing or sensing something? How do we ensure we are really seeing or sensing something? Well, you're seeing, you're not seeing. That's pretty obvious. And you're feeling, you're not feeling. You're sensing, you're not sensing. When I worked in tarot, I had a couple tarot shops, and you'd start off going into the past of the person's story, and then you go into the present of the person's situation, and then you follow that causal stream into the future. So the person you're doing the reading for gets a clear, yep, the past was correct, the present is correct, so it's predictable the future will be correct as well in the reading. So you're putting in some safety measures into how you do the reading. You don't just go straight to the future. You want to create confidence that, yes, I'm on track in the causal chain of what I'm reading from past, present, and the future. so you can see whether the results are real or not. Okay, now we've got how to develop clairvoyance. All right, so clairvoyance, you have a causal chain. Each of the 6 gates of the mind first need to be separated from the intending mind and the observing mind. So with eye consciousness, you do the same as Franz Bardon's step 1 mental training, where observe the rising and falling wave thoughts, but with your eyes open, taking in visual information. So you have the part of the mind which observes, you have the part of the mind that has intention inside of it that does, and then you have the field of consciousness and information flowing. Now you obviously want to do this with your eyes closed, watching your thoughts rise and fall away. And then when you're in that state where the thoughts and the mind substance generate distance between each other, from there then you open your eyes and go into eye consciousness and observe your thoughts arise and fall away with your eyes open. And there'll be a natural tendency to, oh, that's brick, oh, that's this, that's that, whatever you're looking at, and go through the labeling process. So you have to detach the labeling process. Because when you're in a psychic stream of information, the moment your intellect switches on and starts categorizing, labeling, and organizing the information, you break the stream. So people with a very contracted mental space will do more of that than people with an open space. So people with open mental space tend to be more psychic. All right, so you observe the rising, falling wave thoughts with your eyes open, observe the stream, separate the intending mind from the observing mind, and then you, from there you work into, from observing to intending. So you look at an object, you put your mind intent on the object, and you observe yourself concentrate on that object visually. So what this does is the observer creates distance between the intention of observing. So you get the intending mind extending out and holding the state that you're in, and the observing mind sits in the background and looks at the bigger picture. So you have a small picture and a big picture simultaneously in your sensory system. From there, both of these 2 exercises are going to create an accumulation of emptiness underneath your consciousness. So when you watch your thoughts arise and fall away, the thoughts get further and further from you, and everything starts to become still. So like your mental space becomes buffered with stillness. That's the accumulation of Akasha. So any form of concentration will accumulate Akasha, but not all types of Akasha are the same. If you're doing a Vipassana-based observing rising, falling away, the Akashic substance is very soft. If you're doing a Samadhi, high concentration type of exercise, one pointed, and occupying a smaller space, the Akashic accumulation is much sharper and glossier and clearer, and it's like a sword. It's a different type of Akasha. The meditation object you use affects the nature of the Akasha that accumulates underneath the object and underneath your mind as you concentrate. So you want to do eye concentration with big space and eye concentration with small space to accumulate these 2 different types of emptiness. Then you make emptiness your meditation object. You sit in equanimity in your eye consciousness. From there we move on to vital breathing through the eyes. So you tune into the feeling of life force. You feel with your eyes, breathe life force in, life force out. And you get that from the building the balls Qigong set. Once you've done that vital breathing through the eyes, then you do the balancing your elements in the 4 regions. Vital breathe, release time, slow everything down into the astral fluid, then tune to the earth element, breathe earth into the legs, and meditate on equanimity. Water into the water region, air into the air, fire into the fire. And then what I want you to do is, once you've contemplated that feeling of equanimity and stillness in each one of those areas, go into your solar plexus, collapse into that stillness and make your mind smaller and smaller, like you're sinking inwards. And there's a particular type of vacuity that you're going to get. And then take that out of your solar plexus and touch your earth region and touch the stillness. Just make your whole earth element still through your body. And it's just like you're just going touch, Boom, and then you have an overwhelming astral quietude in your earth. Then touch your water region with it, touch your air, touch your fire, and then go back into your solar plexus, and you'll be able to collapse into a deeper stillness and cycle through this. So you learn how to touch the elemental regions of your body with your mind with a vacuous stillness to amplify deeper equanimity within each element, which gives you deeper access to the infinity quality in your solar plexus. Okay, once you've done that, you take that infinity quality from the solar plexus and you put it in eye consciousness. You breathe it through the eyes in and out. And what this does is it separates the layers of consciousness of your eyes. When you have any emotional relationship to something you see, you get a stickiness between your mental, astral and physical body, and you need to equalize that stickiness. So you're separating the layers of eye consciousness. In doing so, you'll quickly realize that you have the organ of the eyes, you have the consciousness of the eyes, you have information flowing into the consciousness of the eyes, and then you have the consciousness from where that information comes. So everything in the universe is mind. The wall in front of me is mind substance. That mind substance is reflecting light, and it mixes, the mind substance mixes with that light to come through with information to reach my eye consciousness, and the organ of the body receives it. So I want to separate those layers, and the reason why is at the end it's all mind substance. My mind substance through the organ, through the consciousness, through the information, to the mind substance of what I'm looking at interacts, and you pull the layers apart and you have clairvoyant experiences. When the layers collapse back into each other, the clairvoyance stops. So the Akasha neutralizes the mental astral matrix of those layers and just opens everything up. And that opens your clairvoyance when you're in eye consciousness and you're doing that. So from there, to amplify that, you invoke light. Now you can do the method of pour breathing the Akasha, looking at your mind. Your mind essentially is light. There'll be a personified mind of like a star type quality, that is the center of gravity of your own mind. And then there's a field that star vibrates on, which is more of a universal divine light. So one has a personified identity to it, and then the other is a field oneness identity to it. And as you move through that, you can invoke light and breathe it in and out of the eyes with a prayer to invoke clairvoyance. As you invoke that clairvoyance, you're going to be generating a self-fulfilling prophecy inside the prayer in Akasha and inviting that in. If that prayer has a very altruistic quality to it, you're going to find that it will function for the benefit of others. We're built for evolution. Everything is constantly evolving, and we're evolving for the next generation. So if you use a motive that you're awakening clairvoyance for the benefit of others, then the information that you're going to receive clairvoyantly and the service you're going to provide towards the evolution of the group consciousness, that pulls through you because it's released of time, and it amplifies your clairvoyance. You're part of a bigger evolutionary field of consciousness, and you're in service to that evolution, so the power and energy flowing through you is amplified dramatically. So put a seed inside the prayer that's for the benefit of others. The next thing you want to do is have a look at how do you pray. There's a vibrational scale inside that. You have a frequency of humility, you have a frequency of devotion to your spiritual path, you have a frequency of reverence, you have a frequency of sacredness, and this generates a type of Akasha in the prayer. So when we looked at your meditation objects and how different styles of meditation accumulate different types of Akasha, when your meditation object is a vibrational scale of prayer, of the humility of the prayer, the devotion of the prayer, the reverence of the prayer, the sacredness of the prayer, and Akasha is invoked through the prayer, that generates a different type of Akasha. It's more in resonance with an infinite, unlimited Akasha than a limited type of Akasha. When you have that non-self ideal inside your vow of how and why you're training it, if it's for the next generation, there's a continuity of consciousness in the function of what you're invoking through the prayer, which continues out, which relates to that infinity, which increases success within the prayer to invoke clairvoyance for the benefit of others. So look at the metaphysical framework of how and why you're training the clairvoyance and what its functions are. So when you invoke that light in prayer through the Akasha, and you're invoking the frequency of clairvoyance through the prayer, you invite that down through the crown or through the pores, and you fill the eyes with it, and then you get your body to equalize with that. Now the type of clairvoyance you're working with will be unique to each person, and its function. What is the clairvoyance for? If you're a healer and you want to investigate disease, okay, then that's a specific type of clairvoyance. You want to look right into the cells, right into the physiology, right into the chemistry. If you're a counselor and you want to see the past, present, future alignment of a person's feeling, thinking and action, and where they've been and where they're going, and how you can counsel them to make better decisions and things to release within their perception of reality so they can have a better quality of life, different type of clairvoyance. You need to look at what type of clairvoyance you want to invoke. Okay, the next thing is accumulating the four elements more effectively and how to deepen stillness in the mind. Okay, to accumulate the elements more effectively, you need to release time before you astrally breathe. So when you vital breathe, I teach a 4-cycle breath to beginners. You draw the life force in through the pores, which you learnt from building the ball. You pause and stop the mind. When you stop the mind and the breath, everything stands still. So you go into that stillness, and then you breathe the stillness through the life force, slowing everything down. And then you pause at the other end of the breath and breathe the stillness. So you're circulating the stillness in and out through your field of consciousness, and everything gets slower and slower. The energy thickens. Once you've got to that thick, heavy space, then swing the energy towards the element. Then start breathing the qualities of water. So what are the body mechanics? Giving yourself a hug. You pull the joints open. Water element has the facial web has a different type of mechanic to fire. Fire, the joints are expanding. Water, the joints are pulling. If you pick up a baby and give a baby a hug, there's a protective aspect to it. There's a holding, nurturing. It's a part of your field. It's like your drop of water and the baby's drop of water unify and becomes one drop of water. You have that's the water element. Everything has cohesion and draws in. Has a pulling aspect to it. So you look at what are the qualities of the water element you're tuning into. What's the information? What are the body mechanics? And what does my mind concentrate on when you do that? So from that astral fluid which you develop by releasing time on life force, it's electromagnetic. Then you swing towards the magnetic, then you swing towards the electric. Once you have these two basic poles separated, you raise up and stretch everything up through your fascia to the air, and then you relax and connect to gravity and synchronize with gravity for the earth. And that astral fluid will flux between the basic quadrupolar magnet qualities. Once you've done that, you place them in the 4 regions, do the collapsing, which we just talked about earlier, into the solar plexus, touch each region with stillness, and go back into the solar plexus and circulate through that exercise, getting deeper and deeper. If you're applying the Kabbalistic sounds, the sh, the ah, the and the ah into the legs, that's the incorrect pronunciation, and you just go through that 4-letter formula. When you start, you equalize the static in your body and the elements to go into equanimity straight away. You just touch each of those areas with a letter, and you drop into equanimity. And that equanimity, you'll swing that towards whichever gate of the mind you're working on in your development. Okay, so accumulating the elements is basically get good at astral breathing first, and then work with the elements, and don't go overboard. You only use as much heat in your body as what you'd use if you got angry to regulate the fire element to bring your body into equanimity. It's about generating equanimity, not about generating fire element. It's how much do you need for equanimity of the fire, and that applies to all the elements. Okay, how to safely look into or receive in this current life any past life skills, abilities we had back then, but without activating or receiving any negative karma related each of those skills, abilities, or powers in those former lives. Bard mentioned some letter formulas, precautions like Z, E, I, A, H, etc. Okay, so to invoke past life skills, you have to first be very good at working in Akasha and moving down that Akashic timeline with your mental body. So there's a type of timeline training where you slide backwards. And past life skills are like mountain peaks. You know, you'll jump from mountain peak to mountain peak. And those peaks are peak skills that are in resonance with this incarnation. It's very, very difficult to disconnect the karma of generating the skill from the skill. And because of the causal chain that allowed you to generate it astrally in that incarnation. So if we, let's say, look at a samurai who spent his whole life concentrating swinging a sword, and he's generated extreme samahati every time he picks up the sword, and that samahati expresses through his astral body, through his spirit, and his spirit aligns, and he's got that concentration and is deeply grounded in the sword. As he starts to move through Akasha and touch non-dual light, the non-dual light arises through that physiological state, that astral state, that mental state, the patterning of concentration that's in resonance with the sword. Now, when he tries to invoke light without his sword, it'll be very difficult. And there's a physical aspect to it, there's an astral aspect to it, there's a mental, there's an Akashic, and there's a non-dual aspect to it. There's this causal chain of interaction restricts how he can teach this light he's connected to. So when he invokes his spirit and invokes light, in order for him to share the gains of his life's work with someone else, he needs to pick up a sword. He has to pick that sword up, teach the technique of the sword, use the vehicle of the sword, the astral nature of the sword, the mental nature of the sword, the Akashic nature, the non-dual light nature, and that causal chain is via the sword. He can't go, okay, I'm just going to do some healing on you with non-dual light now, because the bridges weren't built that way. And his skill has a causal chain that's dependent on that skill. So when you go into any particular past life skill, you need to build your physical framework in resonance with that particular skill from that past life. You need to build your astral framework in resonance with that skill in that life. You need to build your mental framework in resonance with the skill of that past life. Go into the Akasha, invoke it, and let it pass through your mental, astral, physical body so it can be expressed in that way. So you can already see that there's some problems there. You're going to be invoking a lot of karma from those past lives. You're going to be invoking a lot of memories, feelings, emotions, physiological states, because they're associated with the causal chain. To filter them out, the only way that I've found I can do that, and I don't get the same peak results as I did in those incarnations, but what I do is I get the insight of how it works and how to develop it and how to move into a formless state and back to form so it's more relative to this incarnation. And that is, it's a flux between non-dual light and Akasha. You go through the Akasha, you touch the incarnation, and then you relax into the non-dual light of that incarnation, the non-dual state of that skill. Then you invite that down through your crown, through your three bodies, and it will generate a new alignment to how that skill could work within this incarnation, within how your mental, astral, and physical body is aligned, and what exercises and activities you need to allow that skill to present itself in this incarnation. And because it's brought from the non-dual light state down, you're not drawing the karma with it, you're just drawing the information inside the skill. But the skill isn't ripe. It's not magic. It's not, you can just do something. You understand how to do it, but you still have to do the hard work of building the frame mentally, astrally, and physically, because you always need the three bodies to do any type of magic. Okay, so that kind of works with that question. This is question 5, there's 16 of them, so I've got to get through a few more. From a Hermetic perspective, any further information about the how or achievements like stream entry, once return and non-return arahant, or what happens to each other after they die at the realms they arrive at. Okay, so a stream enterer is someone who's achieved basic samadhi. So when you practice increasing concentration, you reach this point in your concentration where, how do we say this, where there's a critical mass, where you can watch yourself concentrate. You have a focused mind, you can step away from yourself and go, oh, I'm still concentrating. That the observing mind, the concentrating mind, the layers start pulling apart, and there's critical mass inside the layers, and you can watch yourself practice without interrupting your practice. This is stream entry. The once returner is where that gets deep enough into the spirit to generate a karmic stickiness in the light of your spirit that will magnetically pull you back into the alignment in your next incarnation to be on the Buddhist path, to be on the path of light, and that you have enough magnetic pull there to ensure that is the case. A non-returner is a person who's achieved non-dual light, and there's a lot of people who, in a past incarnation, they were a monk, they had a very good samadhi skill, they achieved non-dual light, and when they passed away, their spirit raised up into the non-dual light state, the divine light, and when they, at that state, they had a freedom of choice. Do they want to reincarnate again or not? And the stickiness on their mental body is less than their center of gravity of connection to the samadhi and light. Just because this critical mass of concentrating on light, and you can observe that without your mind being pulled in, there's a point at which, when you leave the body, you stick to that light and you can observe it, and there's not enough samsaric force to force another incarnation. So you're a non-returner. You can sit with a non-dual light if you choose. This is not true non-dual light because there's a small amount of flux for you to move and develop yourself. If it's truly non-dual, you couldn't move towards nirvana. Where in these states, you can move towards nirvana, but very slowly. 1 year on earth, 500 years on heaven is functioning, and that 1 year development here is 500 years development there. That's a big difference. So beings who are in this state realize very quickly the law of rhythm on earth has this spectrum, the rhythmic movement is tiny in that space, so, and the time continuum differences, they all want to reincarnate and go back into the path of service and evolve themselves. Okay, so the center of gravity of your mental body, if you're a biker, you like drinking, smoking, and indulging in biker type activities, as soon as your physical body dies, you're in resonance with biker heaven, that's where you're going to go. You're going to end up in that space. And your mental body will, like will attract alike, and you come to like resonance of the center of gravity of your spirit. Whatever state of static and vibration that is, or absence of static. So if you were doing an Akashic sit and you're deep in Akashic trance and something happened to your physical body and you disconnected, you'd be lost in Akasha, because your mental body would have a certain critical mass in that moment in Akasha. And there's many spirits lost in Akasha. In the same way there's many spirits who are ghosts who have a traumatic death, and the trauma of their death makes physical and astral substance stick to their mental body, so that the center of gravity of the mental body can't move into normal reincarnation process, because they have too much traumatic astral substance stuck to them, so they become a ghost. So when you encounter ghosts, these ghosts are very closely stuck to the physical world because of that astral substance. And the first thing you do is surround them with Akasha, dissolve the stickiness, then you go to the light of their spirit and you do 3 transformations, raising them up into light. And the moment you do this, they're freed of that astral hold that's holding them in that, as a ghost, and they get freed up. And when they get freed up, their spirit rises and they can go into the normal reincarnation process again. So it's trauma that sticks to the spirit that stops the normal system from functioning the way it should function. Okay, so question 7, physical immortality, and if there are immortals out there like Mahum, Tata and others from different traditions from around the world, and how they might have achieved it, and what of them and their purpose and goals. think it possible to attain immortality, and then after eons decide to break it and go for nirvana? Can there be a combination of worldly powers, longevity, and nirvana while living in the physical world? No, they can't. All right, and the reason why they can't is because if someone is on the path of nirvana, it's a totally different path on the path to longevity. It's a different path to the path of worldly powers. When you're looking for worldly power, you're bringing things into form. So the energy's coming down, mental, astral, physical, and you're interacting with the Akasha to produce things in form. You're creating an infrastructure of magic. When you're developing nirvana, you're bringing things out of form. You're deconstructing the fabric of your astral nature, you're deconstructing your system and going into a formless state. Those of you who have met an arahant, it's like you can see straight through them. There's a part of them which is emptied of intent. And it's sort of like, wow, they're almost transparent in their energy field. They're very clear. And we're not talking about clear light. This is someone who's on that non-dual light level. We're talking about the energetic framework of doing so much Akasha and non-dual light work that all the stickiness, mentally, astrally, and physically, is released. Now, just doing this to the mental body will allow a person to touch nirvana, but they'll have an astral mess there. So they might be still addicted to cigarettes, and like many arahants in Thailand are chain smokers. Their physical astral body is a mess. They don't train any immortality. They don't care about their body. They only care when they enter into meditation, that they go through this process of releasing. And these guys, they're touching nirvana, but they're doing it in a very different way to someone who's leading a pure path, who's got let's say a Tai Chi body, and they released all the tension in their body. They've cleaned up their astral body, and they've cleaned their mental body, and they're radiating light through all the bodies. Then they enter nirvana. They produce a different type of thing to the arahants in Thailand, who kind of have the outward persona of a chain-smoking bum. Different thing. Now, you'll quickly realize once you've met some of these people that their astral nature. Okay, I was in a temple, and I met a monk, and we started chatting, and he seemed like a very chatty type of character and very flamboyant. And I'm going, oh, okay, he's very, very bright. And then he said, oh, I just have to finish this ritual. And he made a prayer, and the whole space went quiet around where we were standing. And he invoked a type of vacuity. So his mental power was totally different to his astral personality. They were chalk and cheese. And if he hadn't presented that prayer, I may have missed his spiritual power because I just wasn't looking for it. But when he made that prayer, lit the incense, did the blessing, and then the whole space went into the Akasha around him, it's like, wow, this guy's got some skills. So the mental body skill and power, and the astral body contaminants, and the physical body, they're three separate bodies. Buddhists who are working towards nirvana, especially in the Theravada system, they're only concerned with their mental body. They trash their astral and physical bodies. And it's kind of a strange phenomenon, but it's there. Now, immortals. In the Himalayas, ever since as a child, there's like a magnet pulling my spirit to the Himalayas. And in the caves, there's hermits living there that I don't know how old they are, but they're radiating such intense light that I've felt them ever since I was about 6-7 years old. It's been a pull. And at that age, I didn't know what that pull was. And as I got older and looked at a map, I went, something's pulling me to that place. And these spiritually highly developed people are extremely, extremely closed off. They don't interact with the world. Highly developed people tend to be introverted, tend to not like to associate with people, They tend to hide themselves, and they don't want anyone to know their path. So in Franz Bardon's work, he says, don't tell anyone about what you do, be very, very secretive. You put that on steroids and you have these people who are striving towards immortality. They're extremely quiet. Now, some people say, oh, Mark, why are you sharing all this information? If you were a real practicer, you'd be really quiet about it and you wouldn't put any videos on the internet. And there's a certain degree of truth in that when I post a lot of information on the internet, there's a draw of energy from me. There's a drain. It's like people are sticking hooks into my energy field and draining and drawing energy off me. So what I need to do to post information and share information on how to develop yourself in hermetics is remain more detached from the internet and from people and from those videos. So when I record videos like this, I don't even watch them. I'll just trim the front and back off for when I start the video and finish the video, and then upload. I don't look at them. I don't really connect to them. And I disconnect, and I feel all the energy coming in, and I just neutralize it in Akasha and ignore it, so that it doesn't pull me down. Now, if you look at a yogi in India who did some video footage and interviews when he was young, he's radiating light, really altruistic, and like, wow, this person's got it. 20, 30 years later, they've allowed themselves to become too much in the public eye. They've got a big following. Their energy's all dirty. They've got all these weird sexual problems floating around their energy field, and they've lost it. And very often, it's not that they're going, oh, I'm chasing money, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Some of them are, but the more they try and help people, the more people's hooks get into them, and you put 1,000 people around you with the hooks in, they pull you down. You can't sit in that non-dual light and totally transcend the physical, astral, mental path of service. The path of service means you've got to jump into the sewer to clean people. And that's the case in India. It's got that vibe. They'll come down to these really heavy astral physical environments and be in service. So they're going to get dirty, and if they're not careful, they get caught in the projections of the culture onto the yogi, onto the master, and they lose it. If they get too many anchors pulled in, they get pulled down. So practitioners need to remain very detached from the knowledge they share and the people they connect to, so that they don't get pulled down. So you have to do regular cleanup as a teacher, where you just demagnetize your mental, emotional, physical relationship to people, so you don't get too caught. Now, having said that, the Buddha said your friends are your path. He didn't say it's a part of the path. He said it's the path you walk on. And think about that. You take your 3 closest friends, add them together, divide by 3, and you look in the mirror and say, oh, that's a big part of me. So your astral unconscious patterning, how you think, feel, and act, and your yearnings are a reflection of those people. Now, when you're going through this spiritual development process, you'll quickly realize the people you trust, the people you confide in, they have a very strong unconscious regulation of your energy patterns, and that is your spiritual path. So that's your map, that's the road you're walking on. So pick your friends very, very, very wisely. Okay, let's continue on this. Is it possible, or how can it be, to attain nirvana without sangha, a spiritual community or monastic-like life to support you, and not get engaged with the attachments and aversions of society? Can it only be done via an arahant and eventually engaging in his sangha? Well, my teacher had achieved nirvana, and he pulled the entire class in nirvana one day and said, okay, pulled everyone up, everyone touched it, and once that taste was there, I could never forget that taste. So I could take that taste and put it in the equanimity underlying these layers, and even though I never went back into full nirvana, because I chose to be married and chose to be in public life and have this fabricated reality that I'm in, the flavor never left me. It's a yearning that's always there, and because of that direct experience, there's always, when the spirit goes into equanimity, the magnetic pull towards it increases. So as I age and I get to this place in my life where, oh, okay, I'm semi-retiring, I'm reducing my teaching load, I can start taking more time in retreat myself to touch nirvana and re-enter that state that my teacher was nice enough to give me, then I can take ownership of it. Now, if he hadn't given me that experience in 1988, I don't know whether I would be able to go back there on my own accord, to be able to just access that through releasing and using conventional Buddhist methods. It would be extremely difficult. Where if you're around someone who has touched nirvana and they leave that flavor inside you, and that flavor is a knowing of exactly how to re-access it, then you can go and do that practice and you can re-access it. But unless you have achieved nirvana in a past life and are waiting to reawaken and re-achieve it in this incarnation, it's very, very unlikely. If nirvana is your goal, find someone who's touched nirvana. And not someone like myself who's touched nirvana, haven't taken ownership of it yet. And I may, as I get older and have more time for this, to just sit in equanimity for 12 hours a day and be sensitive to those higher layers of light and releasing my attachment to those light, because I'm highly addicted to light. I've been reincarnating in a non-dual light in the sun for a lot of incarnations, and it's highly addictive. Because everything you need spiritually nurtures you inside that light. It's full and complete. So why would I want to leave that? So you have I have a lot of work to do to release my connection to the sun and release my connection to path of service, to dissolve all those things. Now I'm going to go further. But I was very fortunate that I had someone implant that path inside me, that if I choose that, it's there. So find an arahant who's already taken ownership, take 10 years of your life to follow the arahant, and if you're 100% committed, I'm sure you can achieve nirvana. And it's very achievable. After I had that experience with my teacher and the clarity of that, everything you do is an exercise for touching equanimity, everything. And if you recognize you touch the elements in your body with equanimity, you touch your mind with equanimity, and equanimity is the elevator, the door to all things, that all spiritual levels that exist, including nirvana, that you are just cultivating an equanimous relationship between your mind, equanimity, and object, then nirvana becomes, it's very, very doable. It's something that's open to everybody, as long as they understand that equanimity is the door. And all practice produces equanimity, which allows the mind to work up and down the vibrational scale and make ascension a part of your reality. Okay, let's move forward. So yes, you don't need monastic life, but you do need to have the company of a nirvana, arahant who's attained nirvana to achieve that. I would like a suggestion on how to do the visualization exercises. Okay, so I had a student who had been doing visualization exercises for a couple of years and failed. He was going through the initiation text, but he wasn't communicating with me. I didn't know where he is at. And he said, I'm going to give up. He said, I can't do this anymore. And so I looked at him and said, okay, can you visualize your girlfriend's tits? And he went, of course. So I said, what's the problem? And he called me up the next day and said, yep, I've mastered visualization. Now in Buddhism, that would be an incorrect method because it's such a strong attachment. But it gave him the understanding that the magnetic fluid in the mental astral matrix that binds you to a visual object is the key or door to mastering visualization. So if you charge vitally, astrally, mentally a visual object, you'll be able to hold it in your mind really clearly. So for me, when my daughter was born, it was a very intense moment. And that visual is super clear. Now, the same mental astral cohesion I had to that, I can put onto any visual object and visualize it clearly. And then from there, I transfer my mental body to the visual object and identify I am the vision. I can demagnetize the mental and astral, so I don't need my physical body, I don't need my astral body. I tune in and identify I am this, so then I can see that. And then you can do it without the mental astral fluid to help you visualize. So it's a stepping stone to that state. Can you talk about non-dual light in relation to the Dantians and Akashic exercises? Okay, so when you balance the four elements, the four regions, you go into the solar plexus, you collapse your mind inwards, and it's easier to touch Akasha collapsing form inwards than going outwards. So you go inwards, and once you have that infinity quality from sinking inwards, you pour breathe it, and you learn how to pour breathe it into any object your mind touches, so that you can go into the infinity of the object and enter into Akasha underneath things. Once you've gone into the Akasha underneath things, your mind gets this ability to look at itself from Akasha. So it's kind of like a reverse mirror. And when you start doing that, first thing you notice is that your mind is just light, and your mind is sticky, and your mind is subject to an identity, and is subject to wanting to be a form. So it tends to manifest itself in a star. Sometimes those stars take on sacred geometry type patterns to reflect the frequency of the star. So underneath you'll have different types of geometry, but we won't go into that. It's a star. Now it's individualized. That light will vibrate in a field of light, and it's a star in a field of light. Now, as you observe this from Akasha, your mind is going to go from identifying itself as I am this star to I am this field of light, and that's the non-dual light, divine light. And so this stage is very important, because this is where the teachings of Buddhism come into play on non-self. And when you're working with the non-self from that field of light, then the achievement of nirvana becomes accessible, because that field of light is still a fabrication. And this is where the Buddhist system opens up the last door and has a huge amount of value in... sorry, I switch all this off. All right, so it has a huge amount of value in how to work on the higher levels. Now, despite what people think, Buddhism isn't a very good system for beginners, because it doesn't teach you how to develop psychic ability. You have to be highly empathic, highly psychic to understand Buddhism. It is the last door. It is the highest system on this planet. And when you read about Buddhism, it is not what the intellect will fabricate intellectually about each of the teachings of Buddhism. It is a different thing. Every tuning fork in the Dharma emanates a particular type of frequency, and you put these tuning forks together. It's an alchemical process spiral for ascension and to release self. And it's the light of self that you're releasing. So it's a highly complex thing, and you need a high degree of intuitive intellect to comprehend and understand it. Reading books on Buddhism is a waste of time, really. You're better off focusing on how to develop your intuitive framework, your psychic abilities, so that you can later understand Buddhism. Okay, can we talk about non-dual light in relation to the Dantians? Okay, so when we're working the three centers of gravity, I teach several different models on working with light, depending on the structure of the person. There's three transformations up. Each Dantian is a center of gravity of mental, astral, physical body. You invoke light down through the three centers, from the crown, touches the mental body, it radiates light into your mental space, and it dissolves static, so your samahati gets stronger. When you bring it into your astral body, it allows deeper equanimity of the astral elements, so you can go deeper into Akasha, which generates astral samahati. And then when you bring it into your physical body, it reduces static in your physical body in relation to synchronicity of the three Dantians, so that you can synchronize your spiritual life physically. These types of things, there's not a lot of value in talking about them because they're just words. You need to practice non-dual light and be guided through that process to get benefit, really. Okay, number 11. I would be interested to see what his take is on daily introspection and the soul mirror work is. Okay, so every thought, feeling, and action you have during the day, you want to touch it with equanimity. So you have mind, a static experience, mentally, astral, physically, and you touch that with equanimity and go into the empty space underneath it and recognize it's fundamentally an illusion, and you float your mind above the illusion, and that's your daily mirror work. And you do that as a continuous self-awareness on all your experiences as you're touching your daily experiences, so you vibrate above them. This can only really be done if you've been doing Akasha and light work, so that you can empty out the fabrication. You don't want to be building more fabrication in your daily life, and that you don't want to be fabricating stickiness in your mental, astral, physical body. You want to be demagnetizing and equalizing that so that you can ascend. So you have spiritual freedom, and that becomes your daily mirror work. Any tools and means to train the fire colors and air notes, sounds, poles, letters. I don't want to accumulate in the room any wrong anti-genius realms color or a wrong one. What is the point change of signs one realizes the 3 sense poles concentrated are actually producing the letter vibration, not just wasting time combining things you don't match together? Okay, so I'm guessing you're talking about the Kabbalistic letters, and you're accumulating in the room. Okay, so go into the sun sphere, and the last of the spirits of sun sphere is the founder of Kabbalah, and you invoke him into your mental body. Breathe into the sun sphere first, bring him in and get him to pronounce the sounds, emanate the colors, and bring the frequencies of each letter through you, and you'll be doing a totally different animal with Franz Bardon's book. It gives the framework, but the colors, sounds, tones, everything's different. It's much more akin to Tibetan deep throat singing. You know, the Tibetans have this so these very, very, very deep sounds in the sun sphere that are the source of Kabbalah are the only way to learn Kabbalah. Learning from the book, you can't. I've never seen anyone even come close to succeeding. You need to go to the sun sphere, go to the founder of Kabbalah, invoke that spiritual consciousness, and let him take over your mental, astral, physical body, guide you through the process and learn it. I can't actually teach Kabbalah. I can only teach a person how to learn Kabbalah. You need to get to a point where you can invoke this consciousness, the essence and fabric of what Kabbalah is, and let it speak through you and receive direct transmission from the deity. You can't get it from a person. And I've tried to, because I've been working with the sun sphere for over 30 years. And I can produce these things inside me, but when I give them to a student and produce them in the student can't keep them. They'll have a blissful experience and go, wow, that was great, but it gets lost. Because the transmission needs to come directly through their intuitive framework. If I place my intuitive framework over yours and will it into you, you get it, but you didn't have the intuitive framework to pull it through you to start with, so you lose it. So all high spiritual teachings are received through deity yoga. through directly invoking it from these universal consciousness layers. And you don't need a teacher. You need a teacher for the first book, and then once you've done the first book, you are the teacher. You're a vibrational match to God already. And you need to recognize that. And when you recognize that resonance, you bring yourself in the resonance of any cosmic frequencies you want. They pass through you and you learn. You are the teacher. You don't need me, you don't need anyone else. Just sit quietly, you'll release time. Keep sitting quietly, you release space. Keep sitting quietly, you go into Akasha. Keep sitting quietly, you see the light of mind. You keep sitting quietly, you release fabrications of that light of mind. And if you keep sitting quietly, you attain nirvana. Or touch God, whatever view you've got about it. So it's just equanimity. You have to learn to enter equanimity to each experience, touch equanimity of the experience, and ascend. Okay, so that's how you tune those color sound relationships. Supposedly the gym training is utilized as a means to mostly train the will and any energies, elements, fluids. If you don't need your body to strengthen your will, then up to which point or stage can the gym training and the energies be worked on? Can one substitute the gym by any other meditation or not means? Well, you don't need the gym. Most monks and practitioners walk. And for me, walking is a wonderful practice. Shugendo guys, they sort of rock hop up the mountains. Gym training peaks your electric fluid out and it makes your growth leap. So you get huge ramping up of energy very, very quickly. And because I teach Qigong, where people are wanting to learn power, I give them the best methods for developing power. But it's not the best methods for developing nirvana or releasing. You don't need power for that. You need equanimity. So it's your mind's relationship to what you touch, to how you equalize with that relationship to ascend, to reduce the stickiness. Equanimity dissolves that stickiness. And in this process, you have form jhanas, form states, and then you have formless jhanas, and you have equanimity in the middle. So if you went to equanimity and form, you'd end up in between equanimity here and form there. You'd end up in this middle place, which is an equanimity. But if you train formless, Akasha, which is the vacuous stuff underneath form, you equalize the form, so you end up in equanimity. So you need formless Akashic training to equalize things. If you just touch it with equanimity, you end up halfway between where you are and equanimity. Do you understand that concept? So you touch it with Akasha, you drop into equanimity. And when you touch high levels of stress in the gym, where you're tuning your fascia with Akasha, you generate an equanimity in regards to stress. So when you have normal small levels of stress, thank you. When you have small levels of stress, then you'll find that it can't touch you because you're equalized to such high levels of stress. And then the conductive power that moves through the facial network, when you're doing energy work, that becomes obviously very evident that you can just stream 10 times more through your facial web when it's strong. Gymnastic work is most probably the best balance out of all that. Okay, so in the theory section, and do indoor climbing. Indoor climbing is one of the pinnacle exercises for facial web training and energy conduction. And I'll go into theory of that in another video, just someone remind me. In the theory section, Bardon mentions the qualities of the spirit with respect to the elements. Okay, so earth element is omnipresence. You get this from non-dual light training, where you feel connected to everything. Everything is an extension and part of you when you're in that state of frequency. And so that's a universal quality of the earth element. Now, if you pick up a baby and you hold the baby, you're magnetic, your body's in a magnetic state, you're protected, you love, you're nurturing, you encapsulate the baby, you come into a state of like a maternal oneness with the baby. You love that baby. Now, if you take that as a vibrational scale, through childbirth you're working for the next for the next stage of evolution of the group consciousness. You're evolving. You're giving your DNA, your knowledge, your everything you have to the baby for its evolution, and there's this release of time that takes place inside that. And when we look at universal love, metta, it's an understanding of this causal evolutionary curve and looking at your inner connection to everything around you, and then dedicating yourself for that benefit, it generates an insight into what universal love is and its evolution itself and the mechanisms that make evolution function as a unified field of universal love. So each one of these qualities can't be defined intellectually. They're qualities of spirit. They're formless. So you can only make metaphors like these to describe what they are. The air element is insight and understanding into things. When you are working with a non-dual light and you're in the information field of how things come into form, you get unconscious knowing of how things function. And depending on your education, you are limited by how your mind is restricted by your ability to metabolize information light into form. So I have a limited education. That means my understanding of this information, I can't translate it. I don't know how the inner function of a computer works, so I can't translate light and information in relation to that. I can't go to the leading edge of IT and take it to the next level because I don't have the education to do that. My education is limited to certain areas. Now, I can look at, this is what computers are going to do in the future, and the way they're going to be connected to people is going to be really, really interesting. And how small they're going to get is very, very interesting. And our connection to the world is just, wow, okay. You know, it's one group consciousness through computers. So it's going to be a fascinating future. How that works, I don't know. I can't intellectualize that. I'm not a computer engineer. So when you're looking at the air element and that insight mind, it's restricted by the chemistry of your brain, the neurogenesis of your brain, how you educate yourself. So for many years, I decided 3 hours a day in my evenings, I'm going to study to educate myself in all these different areas so that I can make sense of all this energy coming through. And you'll find yourself becoming highly addicted to educating yourself to neurogenesis when you practice non-dual light. These two just work together, and they'll just become a natural part of your experience. No, thank you. So, so when you're working with these types of principles, they become self-evident when you're inside of light. And omnipotence of the fire element, it's a type of divine will. It's when you express your will, and it's not the will that we look at as extreme concentration, primordial mind, or anything like that. It's much more of interconnected sense of control of light when you're in a field of light, that you identify so much with it that your will is able to express that divine quality through that light. So it's again something that can't be verbalized. Okay, so question 15. They say Ting, listening, and Song, release, are the fundamental skills of Tai Chi Chuan. Say in a future dystopian world, all the information form, etc. of the internal martial arts are somehow gone, destroyed, vanished, and the conditions are such that an internal martial art has been created. Okay, so this is a very long question. Okay, we press the delete button on internal martial arts. And when it's deleted, what's going to come back? Well, vital breathing is obviously going to come back. The facial web radiates vital energy. And as we the science develops this understanding of fascia and vital energy, it'll automatically begin to generate more and more methods for sports to continue on that journey of sorry about the lighting. All right, that's a bit better. Okay, let's clear. All right, Okay, so vital energy automatically reactivate within sports science. Slowing energy down, slowing the mind down to vital energy will generate an understanding what astral energy is. It'll just happen. And when people follow common sense, push your joints open, oh, I've got more vital energy. Now, slow my mind down, oh, I've got more astral energy. Common sense will prevail and people will just follow those natural rhythms. But only highly empathic people understand them. Now, we talked about a layering process some other videos where you look at each subconscious skill. When you learn to breathe vital energy as a subconscious skill, that you watch yourself breathe vital energy, a part of your personality learns to access that and use vital energy on its own, independent of your own intent. Then when we take that into the next level of going into the astral and working with astral personalities of energy, you very, very quickly find that you'll very okay, let's leave that there. You'll very quickly find that psychologists who are working with energy will very, very quickly figure out that we have all these subconscious layers of personality that are developing independent personalities that are using energy to do things. This is why most Qigong masters can't teach their skill. They develop unconscious layers of skill that interact with each other to be able to do things, but they can't see them doing it. So if you do a lot of vital breathing and watch yourself vital breathe and separate your intent from vital breathing, you'll unconsciously learn how to control vital energy. And it's unconscious in that it's a personality layer that does that. When you get these personality layers interacting and building intrinsic energies and producing different types of Fa Jin, and you separate yourself from that awareness of how it formed, you can't teach that to another person. You have to be able to see that, these layers of my own unconscious mind have developed through this years of training, and I'm able to do interesting stuff. If a person's not empathic enough and sensitive enough to pulling apart things into equanimity on a regular basis, they simply won't have that skill set. Okay, so last question. Anything related to Dzongul, Trigchod, rainbow body practices? In relation to this guy, I don't know, but I know a whole series of rainbow body practices that may or may not be the same as this guy. When you work with the letter J in Kabbalah, it produces a beautiful rainbow. When you work with the letter I, it produces very, very, very beautiful rainbow. And the letter J in particular has a frequency of hugging. This is all I can say about it as a metaphor. When people see it, they feel loved by it. It hugs them. And when you generate this frequency within yourself, you feel like you want to hug everybody. I did this frequency for a 1-year practice. I like to do 1 year per letter in Kabbalah. And I found myself becoming slightly gay. And it was kind of a weird experience that my body became soft, my personality became soft, my voice became slightly gay. Not that this is a bad thing or a good thing. It's just what this frequency does to people. Some of my friends would say, "You're not changing sides, are you?" And I say, No, just a practice I'm doing at the moment, softening that masculine energy is becoming more softer and more feminine. And this frequency of love, it's seeking to balance electric and magnetic towards a type of equanimity where you equalize between the yang side and the inside of the love. And that rainbow energy is the effect. So rainbow energy is an expression of compassion and love, which are similar frequencies. And whatever practice you do where you're creating very, very high amounts of this magnetic fluid, you're going to generate a rainbow aura around you, especially if the information inside that magnetism is in resonance with universal love. And you're invoking prayer through the practice in resonance, universal love, a rainbow body will just start to appear around you. They just become a natural part of your experience. Okay, so that's 16 questions. The kettlebell exercise, I'll put on another video for you guys later. I hope this answered some of those training questions. And if you're still here, thank you for your time, and catch you on the next video.